can complain for all we want about you will pay taxes, you will pay, you won't ask questions. The law, as it says, is that you have to pay your taxes. This year, as a whole, you find that most companies have done a few things like reduce staff strength. Top line has been adjusted for most companies. So naturally, you don't need rocket science to know that your tax contribution is going to dip this year. And it then makes it a question of productivity in the economy, as it were. Now, there is also the major point about the sustainability. We have this knee-jerk reaction where we have a problem of cash flow, we start focusing on tax. If the oil goes back again, we leave it again and we go back to it. So this whole idea of understanding the role of fiscal governance as a means of achieving it becomes an issue. So I'd like to ask the following question. When the AIGP came out, there was no connection between the AIGP and anything around the fiscal structure as it were. Because one thing you understand is that you would expect that certain things within those your excise duties, rates, and taxes would also have to change to reflect where the direction is going, which shows there is an absence of ideology. Is there now, therefore, an ideology? Second question. With the debt service to revenue ratio going southward, going upwards as we see every day, where is the gap for us? Third question, and any of you can pick any of the questions if you know, is that this fundamental contract between the citizen and the state, which goes to what we have repeated it often here, the social contract, is in effect non-justiciable contract in the first place, because there's nobody being held to account in government to start with. The section 6, subsection 6C of the Constitution makes it very clear. So we don't really have a contract, it's a myth. So let's just break it down to what it is. How do we, without setting up another policy commission which will just pile on things, how do we ensure that we manage the argument around collections with the need for utilization on the other side? I think Neil, you perhaps speak to that, but I mean you can speak to any of them. 3 questions. I mean, you start.
I start? Okay.
Because you have to speak on the debt issue as well.
On the ERGP, the ERGP has an objective of going from 5 to 15% of GDP.
Yeah.
When it came out, some of the policies were not completely laid out, so the details were what was missing. How do you go from 5 to 15 and year by year? I think there's a committee on revenue that has been put together, but the measures and the potential of different taxes are clear. You have CIT, PIT is at the state level, you have excise that are low, property tax that's also at the state level, and then you have VAT, where, so those 3 sources are where really action is needed. There was a focus initially in the RGP on administration, which is fine. And the RGP also says at some point VAT reform needs to be acted on. But tax administration, the measures that need to be taken take time, but they can give some significant yield, but they cannot get you to 15% without tax policy, where this is where the political angle comes in. But in the RGP, I would say act on some of those reforms. Excise is one way. Tax administration is the second way. And on tax administration, you know, when I talk about compliance, or when I talk about having the right taxpayer register, or focus on the large taxpayers. I mean, you know, the numbers that I said about VAT, when you are focusing on all the taxpayers, but 97% of VAT filing gives you 3% of revenue, you know that you can maybe spend your resources on the large taxpayers so that you can get those that give you the large amount of revenues, right? That's some of the statistics that, and you know, cross-data matching is one of them. You have somebody is telling you, I don't have any revenue, I don't pay taxes, but then you find that he has a government contract where customs is reporting them. Those are type of checks that need to be done. Now, you talked about interest payment to revenue. Yes, that was high. That was 66%, but now oil price has gone up. So your interest payment to revenue has gone down. So my recommendation on this is use this opportunity to work on the non-oil revenue, because you can't depend on the volatile oil revenue. This is the time to work on that stream. And so that, to address your comment, is that this is the time to work on that stream so that you don't need pressure when oil prices go down again, that you have problems in mobilizing revenues and where pressure seems to be.
So the shocks, the propensity for the country to be exposed to shocks remains either way. So there's no buffer really.
But the country is exposed to shocks. So when oil price goes down, then the economy, the non-oil economy is also affected, and therefore the non-oil profits, etc., and therefore your base is going down. But that's where you're widening the base or increasing the rates can come in. But that works both ways, right? And I would say this is the perfect opportunity to make sure that the non-oil revenue mobilization, 2010 you could say was a good time, 2011, and you saw that non-oil revenue has not moved since then. So the only thing that has changed is that oil revenue has gone up. But the spending needs are still as important as they are. And you had a third question, which was?
Utilization and collection and utilization. What are we doing? What are we not doing in that regard? The conversation seems to just focus only on collection. How do we collect more, widen the base, and whatever.
This is why you have a budget process. You have a budget appropriation, you have the spending priorities. I know there's a session after this talking about the human capital investment and enhanced resources needed for educational and health outcomes. Those are priorities of the government that are then debated within Parliament, and there's a lot of emphasis on capital spending. So this is where the resources have been allocated, but this is transparently, I would say, what maybe needs to be done even more is to publicize what is happening with that spending. In other words, you have a budget appropriation, but then what is the execution? And where has that gone? And maybe that's the second aspect that could happen.
Thank you.
Well, I think from my perspective, perhaps the most, yes, revenue is quite urgent, and getting people to, well, getting the system to be able to mobilize resources is very important. But by the same token, the point about expenditure cannot, in my view, for much longer continue to be ignored. Yes, I have absolutely no doubt, and a lot of the work that's been going on is simply about where are the gaps in terms of revenue raising. And Amin has, done quite a bit of in his presentation, looked at a couple of them. That's not all of them, but I am quite clear in my mind that the object is not raising revenue in itself. That's not the end game. It's raising revenue towards a purpose. And one of the things that I fear we may inadvertently set ourselves up for is a scenario where all manner of means, revenue rises, but the inefficiency of spending may continue. And if that happens, the challenge that already exists around the trust in whether or not revenues are being deployed to the benefit of taxpayers will simply intensify. And at the earliest opportunity, people will simply not pay taxes. And so in my book, a lot of what we have said about how we should, either from the production side, from the household side, from the trade side, they're all very, very important. But I think for far too long, the conversation's almost been one-sided, go and get the money in. The conversation must divide to, yes, we need to get the money in, but what do we use the money for to ensure that that money can sustainably, continuously continue to come in the quantums that we require? That, for me, is at the heart of what both fiscal governance and fiscal philosophy will have to deal with.